One family, one people, one planet, one love. One family, one people, one planet, one love. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to SoulCall Sunday. My name is Lisa Ferraro. I am the founder and spiritual director of SoulCall Ministries. So happy to have you this morning joining us. And I am so grateful to welcome Reverend Dr. David Leonard. Good morning, David.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us again. You were with us on Wisdom Wednesday this past week. If you missed it, it's archived on our YouTube channel, SoulCall Ministries. David is one of the wisest, most loving, soul-centered, brilliant humans I've ever had the privilege of being in contact with, let alone the humble opportunity to be of service with you, serving the one. Last week, the talk was on quantum entanglement, quantum coherence, and pure love. And we're going to pick up where we left off last week with the brilliance of David joining us, because we were talking a lot about living in the possibility of serving the one. And so I'm going to stop talking and I know David's mind is just filling up with brilliance that just flows so effortlessly. And so thank you.
Don't have any expectations, because that buildup,
It's a knowing. I don't expect it. I just kind of know.
Well, I loved last week. I watched your wonderful talk, and you started off with a beautiful meditation where you took him into that field that Rumi writes about, out beyond the ideas of right thinking and wrong thinking. So it has nothing to do with thought. There is this field, and you created a felt awareness of that field. And when the soul lies down in that field, words are not necessary. So there's a communication that happens that is beyond the word. And we were talking about how the soul wants to find meaning, whereas the mind wants to find answers. And so when you give up the idea that we're going to give you answers, or we're going to give you a strategy, and turn it toward this, we're going to discover for ourselves, maybe there's meaning for us in this experience that we're all sharing. Everybody's going through this. When I go to the grocery store and I see the little girl at the checkout line, and I bring my bags, and she said, "We're not allowed to pack your bags because they're yours." And I said, "I'm happy to pack my bags." And then I always try to make eye contact, and I say, "I love your mask." And then she'll say, "Oh, my grandmother made this mask." I said, "Well, tell your grandmother she did a beautiful job. She had little hearts on her mask." And so you have these connections with people.
Yeah.
And I'm having more and more of those, aren't you? It's the strange thing. In this shelter in place, I'm finding people are smiling. I took my dog out to go to the bathroom this morning, and he did his business, and I put his collar on, and a woman's yelling out from her car, "That's a mighty beautiful pup you got over there." And I said, "Oh, isn't he adorable?" And I said, and so we're having these conversations and yet respecting each other's space. Yeah. So I'm sensing that the possibility is for the human species to awaken at this time in a way we've never done before. And that's why the good work that you're doing on SoulCall Ministries is helping so many who are housebound, who need that lifeline, and need to remind that we don't have to spin out of control at the circumference of the hurricane. We can go to the eye of the storm, and we can see things with fresh eyes. And we have a poster in my center. It says, "When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change." Nice. And I live by that. When I change the way I look at things, could I know that this is for me? In your wonderful talk last week, you said all of this stuff is for us. So what if this pandemic could be for us? It's here to awaken humanity from our own possible extinction through our unconscious, unskillful behaviors. We have to learn to make this planet sacred. The mother is screaming out at us. Our streams, our air, our water, the animals. So I see some good's going to come out of this. I just have to know that.
Yeah. We were talking earlier too. I know some of the challenges I'm receiving through prayer work on our website. If you need prayer, you can soulcallministries.org or contact Reverend David too. But there's a lot of people are coming in as we're coming to the awareness, as you just said it, that we are a global community.
Yes. Whether
we realized it before or not, it's pretty hard to miss. There are varying degrees of readily accepting that as the new normal. We said it on Wednesday that the new normal is abnormal. The way I said it last week, and we talked about this offline a little bit about waking up in the morning. I keep having this awareness that I am being taken, I wake up and I'm taken right out to the edge, looking into eternity almost every single day now. And falling asleep at night, there's this sense of, I'm not afraid, but of letting go, of letting go. How do you bring yourself back to the center that can find that balance on the edge of what Rumi would say, annihilation, on a
Right.
regular basis? Maybe each of us are experiencing this thing in a different way, but for me, it's my soul is wanting to stretch out, like you said, getting out of the container.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's a very big, beautiful question that doesn't have a simple answer because
No,
the intellect wants an answer. But
right.
my soul would probably respond by saying, there's that wonderful line that says, "Die daily to be born again in me." That's from the Christian tradition. In the Muslim tradition, they say, "Die before you die." So what is dying is just a belief system, is just an identity of the egoic self that has its its way of conceptualizing the world. And strangely, as we become less of the finite self, and I love Emerson, he says, it's only the finite self that wails and suffers. He says, but that infinite presence lies stretched in smiling repose. Now, I have lived with that little saying, could I know myself as this infinite presence that's stretched, that's smiling within me, that's saying, oh, not so fast, my little sir. Why get so upset? Yes, the species may extinguish itself, but the species might wake up as well, that little infinite presence. And we're here to help them wake up. We're here to help them become conscious, co-creators with the universe. We're here to help awaken the servant of humanity. I love that you said in our little interview on Wednesday about serving the one.
Yeah.
It was Rachel Naomi Raymonds, and she was a wonderful doctor, is a wonderful doctor in California. And she wrote something about the different kinds of doctors. And she says, there are some doctors that think they have to fix the world. And she says, the problem with those people is they see the world as a problem to be fixed. Then there are those that feel they have to help others. And she says, the trouble, if you're helping others, you're not empowering them to help themselves. But she says, the best doctor, and I would say the best minister too, is the one who's a servant, who serves the one in the many and the many in the one.
Yeah.
And when we serve by having our own direct experience, so the only way you can possibly talk about dissolving and then coming back is to go into that experience.
Yeah.
Remember
Yeah.
there was that wonderful Rumi thing about the drop, and he says,
Oh,
oh drop, give up your dropness for the whole ocean. Would you rather be the little drop that sees yourself as separate, or would you rather know yourself as the ocean? I think there's a beautiful song that's
listen, listen, oh drop. Yeah, I think we'll make sure we weave that
yeah. But
into
basically that's about that dissolving and
yeah.
living at the edge, because the ocean wants to come in to Lisa and David. And as long as there's too much of Lisa or too much of David, I was listening to Jack Kornfield, and he was doing this wonderful meditation. And he says, the one thing that we need to let go of is all of our successes, because sometimes our successes make us think that we are what we've achieved. And he says, at the same time, let go of all your perceived failures, because
Right.
they can hold you in that place of, oh, my life is such a torn. And he says, and when you let go of your successes and your failures, who's there? The
Right.
soul is there. The
Yeah.
soul doesn't need to say, hey, here's my resume. This is what qualifies me. The soul doesn't need to have a credential. It was Michael Beckwith that says, God doesn't call the qualified, God qualifies the called. And you and I have been called since childhood to
Yeah.
serve this loving presence. And that's why this is so perfect for you. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. Wake up on Wednesday, wake up at the Consciousness Cafe. It was said that if Rumi could distill all of his quatrains down to 2 words, it would be wake up,
Wake up.
wake up.
Yeah.
And I think this is, you know, after people get through all of us, as we've gotten through I don't even want to say the kicking and screaming phase, because some of us quite like being the introvert, and I'm quite okay without mixing all the time, as much as I get to travel and be with other people. Honoring that sacred center and being okay with listening to the small voice and not being pulled
That's
out.
right.
I think there's that kind of fatigue as well.
Since you've been reminding me of Rumi, he's
Yeah.
flooding me, and he's trying to speak through me now. And he said, "There's only one rule." I love it when someone of his caliber said, "There's only one rule," and he says the rule is break the wine glass and fall back to the breath of the wine glass blower. Now, you and I had to break the wine glass of the religions we were raised in, that we could fall back into the breath of the one that is still singing and speaking and revealing. You know, the Christ didn't stop speaking 2,000 years ago.
Huh.
It speaks through all of us. And I think you and I have kind of intuitively known that from our youngest era. And when we get our self-importance out of the way, then we can become these beautiful instruments for the divine.
And then we don't get scared off by a
Right.
hierarchical structure that is
Oh,
holding a certain frame in mind. And I'm going to take this opportunity to jump into that story we promised we would tell.
oh,
Right.
yeah. Well, Lisa has been a hero of mine because she dares to stand up to authorities, especially when authorities are full of doo-doo. And she had a friend who was going through a beautiful life challenge that ended up in her death. And she had requested Lisa to sing something at her memorial service. And the powers that be said, you will not sing that song. So I'm just going to pass the baton back.
I was told not to sing. It was a beautiful song from the Beatles, one of their, and of all the songs, it was In My Life. And on her deathbed, her dying wish to me, I've been a friend since grade school, was to have that song. And I've been singing, this was in the Catholic Church faith tradition. I had been singing in the Catholic Church since I was 8. It was the only way you could actually get me to continue to participate in the Catholic faith tradition. There was not enough there to hold me. So I offered my gift as my voice. So I was aware, I performed at many weddings and funerals there, and I knew what the rules were around where you could play songs such as this, as long as they didn't say anything suggestive. And so I was told by the priest that I would not sing a Beatles song in that church. And I said, well, it's this one, and I know what you're saying, but if we do it at this part of the service where the eulogy is, it's not in the sacred part, and it's fine. And he kind of took that as a challenge. I promised my friend's soul that I would do this, and the soul to me is closer to God than the human around it. And we went back and forth. It was kind of funny because I could hear my little friend saying, I was saying, it's, in my life. And he said, it won't be a Beatles song. And all of a sudden I started hearing, I say yes, you say no. It was like, and I said, it's not I Am the Walrus, it's this song. And he just said something about he made an oath before God to bring the souls unto the Almighty. And in the walls of this sanctuary, you will not sing. And I said, okay, here's the thing. I didn't come back to ask permission. I just came back to let you know as a courtesy. I'm definitely going to sing the song. And I just wanted you to know. And this is where we're going to do it. And this is why I'm going to do it. And I said, I mean, no disrespect to you personally. And I respect the oath you took. I didn't, to uphold a certain thing. I sing directly. I'm going to work it out with God myself. And I'm pretty sure when I leave this planet, it's going to be okay. So you're off the hook. You tried to warn me. I'll work it out with God later.
And let him know what that song goes. There are places I remember.
Places I remember all my life, though some have changed, some forever, not for better. Some are gone, some remain in my life. I love you more.
I use that in so many memorial services because of that story, because it says so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I recognized in that moment, I was not afraid to enter. I came in with the same knowing that I had all along, which was we are all in service to the one. And this person took an oath, and I appreciated on one hand the sincerity of their vow, and the sincerity of my vow to my friend was equally as sacred, because she was right at the gate of transcending and transitioning. And so for that, I'm not saying to go out and be a rebel with or without a cause, but it's just like in serving the love, there's no fear. Like our lover is made defenseless, and there's no fear in it.
And it's important. Remember, at last, nothing is sacred but the integrity of your own soul. I was you remember Mark Moorhead? He worked on Circle of Love, and he died of stage 4 kidney cancer. And I married him to his partner when they had the marriage equality thing here in Huntsville. And he was struggling with this cancer for a long time. And when he transitioned, he played the big organ in the huge Methodist church here in Huntsville. So they wanted the memorial service there, and all the powers that be in their robes were there, and that big cross walking down the chapel, and the pipe organ on the thing. And I was to do a little eulogy for him in the middle of this pomp and circumstance,
Mhm.
with prayers at the beginning and choir singing and little David coming in. And I said, would it be all right if I acknowledged that I married the two of them? And I got told bluntly, we do not acknowledge gay marriage in this church. I said, I didn't ask whether you did or whether you didn't. I said, would it be acceptable if I acknowledged that I married them?
Yeah.
If you must, he said, if you must. And so when my little 10-minute came and I stood up at that cupola in those big churches,
Yeah.
I said, so let me talk about love, a love that two human beings had for one another that was truly beautiful. I said from the agape level, the spiritual love, from the philos, the deep friendship, and from the eros, from the physical love, they were the complete package. And I married them because of the Supreme Court came down on a decision that equality of marriage for two men who had been together only 25 years together.
Oh,
So I had my own little moment of standing up, and you got to do this.
yeah.
And I'm sure I got looks from people, but the call of the soul is stronger. And I
Yeah.
feel that's what you're doing in SoulCall Ministries too.
Yeah.
You're speaking a truth that's universal. It may piss some people off, but that's okay. Because, if you're not doing a little of that, you're probably not doing your work on this planet.
Yeah.
Jesus irritated people when he turned over the tables in the temple and said, I'm
Right.
not, yeah.
Yeah. I feel, and it's not to, I understand the scaffolding and the structure that helps.
Yeah.
Like the mystical path is not for everyone right off the bat. You've got to be able to have your consciousness organized in a way to be able to take living in the mystery every single day like this and
Right.
being okay with that.
Yeah.
And not even pushing the edge, but going out to the edge. And when people step out to the edge with you, all of a sudden it becomes a greater awareness of the presence that's there all the time. It doesn't make you more or less of anything. It just increases your level of awareness and your realization. And that edge is also inside. It's
Right.
also inside. Um, moving forward, like to the soul of the one and voicing the possibilities in this time. Many invitations, we've heard a lot of people talking about there's an ushering in of great light, and all the light workers are becoming more awake and more bright. And I have a feeling that a lot of people listening to SoulCall Ministries this morning are aware that they are the ones we've been waiting for, in the words of a beautiful Karen Drucker song, right? How can you speak to a spiritual practice that would help in the awakening and the evolution of that consciousness? Each one of us will do it differently.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned we're the ones that we've been waiting for, and you gave Karen Drucker the credit. That really came from a Hopi prophecy. And
Okay.
the Hopis basically said, we're all in this river of life together. They say in the prophecy, make sure that your head is above water and that you're looking forward. And then they ask, notice who's in the water with you. You and I are in this water, moving forward. And they close it by saying, at this stage of our evolution, we cannot afford to take anything personally because there is no person, there's no you or me that's separate.
Right.
They say, because we are the ones that we've been waiting for. And so we do need these evolutionary throw forwards. Jesus was one, Buddha was one. I believe you and I are one of those people who dare to speak truth to power systems and say, no, that doesn't work for me. I remember we had the Christians come and we were doing this pilgrimage and all the different religions. And the Muslims came in one week and they said, if you surrender to Allah, surrender to God, you are a Muslim. And I said, that's all you have to do? They said, yep, just surrender. And that's what a Muslim is. I said, wow, I'm a Muslim, I guess, because I'm always saying surrender to this presence.
Right.
May I hear your voice, glimpse the divine.
Yeah.
Then when the Christians came, I raised my little hand. I said, is it not enough to know that the Christ lives within me? They said, absolutely not. You have to have Jesus himself as your personal savior. And I said, so I find out last week that I'm a Muslim and this week that I'm not a Christian. And then I realized any label is too limiting. The soul doesn't want a label.
Yeah.
And so when you ask about spiritual practices, I think life is your spiritual practice. And I loved what you suggested on your last talk. You said, surprise yourself. Go do something fun. Right now, Lisa mentioned last Wednesday that I grow seedlings.
Yeah.
I have these incredibly beautiful heirloom tomatoes growing under grow lights in the basement with purple cayenne pepper plants growing for tray. I found some some pumpkin seeds that I'd saved from a beautiful watermelon or pumpkin that I'd carved, and they're all coming up. So my little boy his spiritual practice is to tiptoe through the garden and plant these exotic things and to have communion with the flowers and the vegetables. And I think it's all practice. My
Yeah.
beloved husband, he weeds we have a moss garden in the front, and they say, well, how great, you don't ever have to mow your grass. We don't have any grass, but we have weeds. So when you have a moss garden, you have to very mindfully, attentively pull one weed out at a time. And when I see him sitting out there with this angelic little smile on his face, that's his practice, is weeding the moss. So we get to find out what it is. I put your music on in the church when I go on Sunday mornings, you and Etika, and I have you take me into that place that you create when you sing together. That's a practice for me. Putting you guys on, you open my heart, and then I can get up there and speak from the heart, because so the practice is whatever works for you, you know? And I think that whatever really works for you.
Yeah, in the soul.
And every day it's different.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
David Leonard, thank you so much. And you're going to hear more of David over the years to come with SoulCall Ministries.
Oh, I hope so. I'm here to serve.
Listen, oh drop. Listen, oh drop. Listen, oh drop. Listen, oh drop. In the arms of the sea, be secure. In the arms of the sea, be secure. Listen, oh drop. Listen, oh drop. Listen, oh drop. Listen, oh drop. In the arms of the sea, be secure. In the arms of the sea, be secure. Have you ever seen an ocean wooing a drop, wooing a drop? Have you ever seen an ocean wooing a drop, wooing a drop? Have you ever seen an ocean wooing a drop, wooing a drop? Have you ever seen an ocean wooing a drop, wooing a drop? Listen, oh drop. Listen, oh drop. Listen, oh drop. Listen, oh drop. Have you ever seen an ocean wooing a drop, wooing a drop? Have you ever seen an ocean wooing a drop, wooing a drop? Have you ever seen an ocean wooing a drop, wooing a drop? Have you ever seen an ocean wooing a drop, wooing a drop? Listen, oh drop. Listen, oh drop. Listen, 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 oh drop. Listen, listen, oh.